what was it, 60,000 people in one place. The devil tried to shut it down a couple of times. We had not a tornado warning, but a tornado watch. We got pulled out of our tents and put inside a big building. There were flash floodings. People's entire campsites got washed away. It was a real traumatic experience for everybody else, but it wasn't for me because our campsite was just fine. And but we had a good time. We had, I don't want to go too far into the Porta-John story, but I will just go a little bit into it. We had Porta-Johns, you know, to be used. But once everybody had set up camp, the Porta-John cleaning facility truck couldn't get in there all throughout the whole camp, and so the Porta-Johns, I don't need to say much more. They were pretty full, and so it was a learning experience for a lot of people involved. But I will say it was probably one of the funnest times that I've had in a long time. It was really good to see the kids. My daughters never traded pins before, and when people told me about trading pins, I didn't even know what they were talking about. I couldn't picture it in my mind. I don't know if it was pens or pins or what, but they're like pins that say stuff, and they have the little backing. You put the little thing on the back like we do in the military. And but there were some pins that were so ornamental, you would think that they were like Christmas tree decorations. They were big pins, and they would say, you know, Colorado Conference, Pathfinder Club 2000, and they just traded back and forth. And finally, by the time it was all over, both my daughters ended up with like little suitcases full of pins. So it was, I don't know how that works, but it was fascinating to watch, and it was a fun time. I decided a couple months ago that I wanted to volunteer in the medical department while I was there, because I didn't want to be walking around hanging out with the kids all day doing 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old stuff. So I volunteered in the medical department, and I was really expecting to see mostly just traumatic wounds, you know, because the kids are playing rough, they're outside of their comfort zone and they're doing their own thing. And really what I saw was a lot of people that should not have gone to camp. You know, they were not ready physically or medically to be going to camp. So we were treating a lot of congestive heart failure, dehydration, possible stroke victims, you know, things like that. So it was interesting on that part too. But the most important thing that happened to me while I was in medical was, and I told my wife this story too, I was working with a student nurse, and I was helping her establish the way she talked to people. She had never done an initial evaluation assessment on somebody. So I was saying, you know, you work with this customer, or you work with this patient, and I'll watch it. If you make a mistake, I'll tap it. Well, we were standing up, and they had closed. We had bathrooms in the medical, so people were trying to come into medical to use the bathrooms, but we couldn't allow them in here because those bathrooms were for medical personnel to use and other staff that were there. There was a lot of local staff that was working for security and traffic control and whatever. Little 16, 17-year-old guy was standing there. He's got the yellow vest on, and I see this woman coming out of the corner of my eye, and I'm kind of a people watcher, so she's walking and she is going to that bathroom. I don't know what she saw, if she was PTSD from what she saw from the Porta-Johns or what, but she was going to use that bathroom, and this gentleman had his assistant in there cleaning and servicing the bathroom for us. And I heard him say, "Ma'am, this bathroom's closed right now. I can't let you use it." And I don't know if she was from America or if she was from Portugal or Brazil or whatever, but you could tell she was kind of hot-blooded. She was upset. And I've had to go to the bathroom pretty bad before too, but she just tore into this guy. And my student nurse kind of broke away from me and goes over there to try and, you know, maybe decompress the situation or whatever. And the fire in her blood was running, and I saw the fist come out, and she's doing this, and her voice was getting higher and higher. And I'm just watching, because if I don't have to get involved, I don't want to. But it was not de-escalating. So I go over there and I say, "Ma'am, what's going on? How can I help?" And she said, this is what she said. She said, "This is a Christian organization, and they're going to tell us that they're going to call the police if I use the bathroom." And I said, well, it's closed, they're trying to clean it, they've got people in there. You know, it's his authority, he's not a Seventh-day Adventist. He works for the campground that we're staying on. I said, really, the unchristian thing here is your reaction to what he told you he has to do. And then she gets right at my face and starts screaming at me. And I didn't get upset. You know, it's not my fight. It's just something I wanted to move on. And I said, ma'am, and I tried to de-escalate with her a little bit, but she's just getting madder and madder and madder. And I'm like, man, she must really have to go to the bathroom. I don't know what the deal is. But finally, I had to say something like, to the effect, ma'am, if you don't leave the area, I'm gonna have you trespass, because this is completely, you're completely lost your mind here. I mean, it's really sad that here we are at the largest Seventh-day Adventist event that I've ever been to, and Seventh-day Adventists are acting like this to a civilian, somebody who's not even ever been involved in the church before. That does not mean that I think less of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It doesn't mean I think less of Christianity. It's just the healing condition. It's a lot about what we were talking about today in Sabbath school. Where your heart is. That's what the verse 21:7 says, Proverbs 21:7. Where your heart is. You can tease out of somebody where their heart is. Just put them under stress. Put them under pressure. And that was one of the things that I took away from camp this year was, wow, we really need to do a deep dive into where our heart lies. Who are we as Seventh-day Adventists? When we're thought about as Seventh-day Adventists out in the real world, what do people think about Seventh-day Adventists? Feel free to answer. What do people think Seventh-day Adventists are? Vegetarians?
Strange.
Strange?
Peculiar.
Peculiar?
Occult.
Occult? That's one. I read that this morning. Sabbath keepers? What's that all about? You know? But wouldn't it be great if we were much more, and I don't want to use the Mennonites or the Quakers or anything, what if we had a much more visible brand of kindness and empathy and a regard for our fellow man, just like we talked about today? What if we actually started talking about love for God, seconded only by love for our fellow man, putting others before ourselves? We have the 28 fundamental beliefs, and it gives us a good background, a good backboard of what we believe in. But do we very often truly engage in that love for our fellow man, that selfless, Christ-like love that Christ exhibited while he was here? And that's hard to talk about, because we only know what's going on in our own hearts. I see Chuck, and I think this guy, he gives his best every day. But for all I know, Chuck could be robbing the school system blind, for all I know. He doesn't even drive the bus. He doesn't do his walk around or whatever. Who knows? And I'm picking on Chuck. You do your walk around. But because the Adventist Church has such a powerful culture and such a powerful set of standards, sometimes it's easy for us to get lost within them, where instead of keeping our relationship with Christ and keeping our relationship with our fellow man as the priority, we look to, say, diet and health. We become people who work out in the morning. I'll pick on vegans. I'm a vegan. When I get off work, I go back and work out again. I want to be fit. I want to be healthy. That's what God says I should do. When really, the real thing that we should be doing is spending every opportune moment to better this world and to better the lives of our neighbors.
Amen.
And I'll tell you, when it comes to that character development, Proverbs goes on to say in Proverbs 6:16 through 19. Give me a minute here. I got a lot of verses today. 16. These 6 things doth the Lord hate. And part of this is my own, I'm looking at my own heart. This is not a sermon to Appomattox, just a sermon to myself. These things doth the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. Those are pretty overt things. And a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. Feet that be swift in running to mischief. a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren, soweth discord among brethren. We've all seen that. You know, as a church, we're really supposed to be the tightest knit group in our social structures. We have the family, and then we have our church family. We've all experienced unrest in the church. Let's see, what was that? Keep thy father's commandments and forsake not the law of thy brothers. One of the things that I've dedicated my life to God twice. One was when I was much younger, and what I was taught to do, because I went to a very ultra-conservative, self-supporting school, was the health message was very powerful, and Sabbath meeting was very powerful, and evangelism were very powerful. But we never talked about the character development that we all should be working on. The selflessness that is exemplified in every small interaction. How many of you have been at work and been insulted by somebody and you snap back? I have. And I did it this last week. I don't want to admit it, but I did it this last week. We lost, I work at a hospital, we lost the internet. So staff came upstairs and they're looking for our dead box, which is the box that has all the documentation in it from when the power goes out. And I wasn't briefed on where it was or how it was kept. And one of the other administrators came up and said, "We gotta have the dead box. Where's the dead box?" I said, "Calm down, it's not an emergency. We have 4 hours before we have to start documenting." And she snapped at me and said, "Well, that's inappropriate." And I said, well, don't come up here making a big deal out of something that isn't. And then I just shut up. Because it wasn't about the dead box anymore. Now it's between me and her. And I want to develop my character so that I'm not that defensive. So that my life is not about me. So that I don't rear back. Because I'm a fighter. I come from a family where, you know, we like to stand up for what we believe in. And this was certainly not the case of that. I should have just shut up, which is impossible for me to do. But I'm learning to. And I went back to her and I apologized later. I said, "Look, I didn't mean to critique you or I hope I wasn't offensive. It's just that I should have done it." That's what I told her. And I realized that even though I dedicated my life to Christ in 2010, I was at war, I was in Iraq, I hadn't made a lot of progress. Not a lot of progress. Because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about this stuff. We talk about, what do we talk about? As step downs, we talk about Sabbath, the soon coming of Christ, the time of the end. But what's going to get us through that time of the end? What's going to help us navigate all these events is our character. Character is the only thing that we take to heaven. The character of Christ. And I feel, if I'm preaching to myself that I am so far from Christ that it's sad. After, what is it? I'm 50. Yeah, so 12, 15 years on my second try. In Matthew 15, 18 through 19, what defiles a man? Somebody got that?
You say 15?
15, 18 through 19. I can read
But those things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceedeth evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies.
So, when I reacted, what was I showing? Now, I can put on that professional hair. I can come to work. You know, I don't wear a tie, I wear scrubs. But I can come to work. I can be neat in appearance. I can be professional. I can be professional all day long. But in that 1 second that I allowed that pseudo insult to break down all my defenses, what did I show? My heart. I'm worried about me more than other people. And you're not going to talk to me like that. And that is a heavy lift for all of us. To be able to go through the world like Christ did. Christ never retorted. He never snapped back. He always had a cognitive answer. And he knew when they were trying to trick him. And I believe if we were right with Christ, we would know when we're being set up, you know, for something like that. And it was really telling, and it's really bothered me for a long time. It's been bothering me for a long time, but it's just a powerful reminder, because I made a commitment to God when I got this new job. It's a pretty professional status, that I didn't want to be that guy who loses their temper all the time at work. Nursing, anybody here a nurse? Oh, that's right. You know, nurses chew on each other. Nurses are mean to each other. It's like a family tradition. And when I was at the VA, there were nurses who hadn't spoken to each other for 20 years. And I don't know why. I never asked why. But it's a tough profession, and I don't want to exemplify that. I don't want to be the type of person who is going down the same road as everybody else. And it defines your leadership. Romans 1:29 says, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, and malignity, speaking, whispering about other people. You know, we don't talk about gossip in the church, but we do gossip. Don't we gossip? Yeah. Gossip is one of the things God hates. It's one of the things God hates. I don't do it at work, and I'm learning not to do it about church. But these little things that are parasitic in nature, that chew away at our character, are important to God. And we need to talk about them, and we need to help each other put those things away. When somebody comes to you and says, hey, did you hear about John? And, no, what? Well, you know, he was doing this. Whoa. I don't need to hear that, you know? Not because what you're saying may or may not be true, but brother, that's not the way we talk about somebody. That's not the way we talk about our head elder. That's not the way we talk about one of our church members. These members are part of our family. And I'll give you a couple of examples, and I'm not picking on the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but I want to talk about the external, how we present ourselves to the world and how we present ourselves to God. God reads the heart. God knows what we think. He knows how we feel. He knows if we're selfish. And he knows if we're actually following him or not. And this is a terrible story. But it's one I wanted to use last time I was here, but I just didn't have the time. So this is a Rwandan pastor and his son are convicted of genocide. A Protestant clergyman and his son, actually the Protestant clergyman was the leader of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Rwanda, were convicted yesterday, and this is back in 2003, of genocide. Sentenced to prison by the United Nations Tribunal for acts of murder. They actually helped the rebels into the hospital area and allowed them to murder a bunch of local tribesmen. And I don't want to go into the details. He was convicted by the United Nations and sentenced to jail. And his son too was convicted. So there had been some vertical communication. There's a value system there that was projected. And this guy was the head of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Rwanda. So somebody selected him for that position. So he presented to the world that he was a theologian and one who cared for the body of the church. But then when he was pressed, when the revolution started, he caved and ended up doing some things that no one would want to be guilty of. And then at Adventist today, and once again, this is not about the Adventist church, this is about Christianity. This is about the frailties of Christianity. Crimes, there are Adventists who commit crimes routinely. I don't need to go into the details. This particular person did a 30-day research. They took a snapshot 30 days back from where he was at that time, which is 2012. And there had been 5 senior Seventh-day Adventist people in the school or conference system that had committed acts of violence against parishioners. And it has nothing to do with the Adventist church, and it has nothing to do with, I'm not trying to belittle our theology. It has nothing to do with being God's end-time people. It's just the fact that what you put onto the world, it's not what you are. When I was at Andrews, the guy 2 doors down from me ended up assaulting a female and murdering her at Andrews University. So we have this code of conduct that we express as Seventh-day Adventists, but the true nature of the walk with Christ is far different. It can be far different than what we express in the 28 fundamental beliefs. And that is God first, your fellow man second. to your detriment. That's the hard part. To my detriment, I'm supposed to help out my neighbor. You know, and we don't talk about that. And I think it's something that we need to talk about more, because in the end times, we are called God's peculiar people. What makes us peculiar? Yes, the Sabbath. What else?
Because we're actually following the Word of God, the Bible.
Right. Which means that when there's a problem, say a natural disaster, instead of running away, we want in to help. When there's somebody in our community who's down and out or has a problem, we go to help. We don't just turn our backs on them and say, you know, let live and let die. And it's one of those things that I have found as I incorporate it more and more, and trust me, I'm a babe. I'm a babe when it comes to this. My whole world changes. Because now, and I'll tell you, I've always been a career person. I've always wanted to make good money. I've always wanted to be successful. I've worked hard. And now that I'm not worried about that anymore, I just want to do the best work I can do. God tells me to do that. He says that the servants should obey their masters. And in that context, it's employee-employer. I should do my best. So now that I'm constantly trying to do my best, and trust me, sometimes I just want to sit at my desk and chill, because it's just fire all the time, putting out fires. Anybody who's been in nursing knows it's just fires. Now that I know that I don't have to worry about that, if God wants me to move up, move out, be something more, or be something less, it's up to Him. When I've given my life to Him in that aspect, it's made my life 10,000 times easier. Because now all I have to focus on is one thing, doing my best. And if the Lord wants to promote me, He promotes me. If He doesn't, if He wants somebody to critique me, and they critique me, if it sticks, maybe I need to work on something. If it doesn't stick, I come out better for it. And it's been a very, very enjoyable sea change in my life. Even my wife will probably tell you I come home much calmer than I used to. Right? I paid her to say that.
I noticed it.
I didn't pay him to say it, but I'll have to pay him later. 1 Peter 2 and 3. And these are all verses that we've read before, but we've just repassed them. We don't really incorporate this kind of stuff into our theology because it's the most difficult part. The changing of oneself, the turning self over to God is the hardest thing about being a successful follower of Christ. Let me see if I can find this second. 1 Peter, if you have it, please read it. Just read part of 1 Peter 1. I'll finish it. 1 Peter 2. Wherefore, laying aside all malice, and all guile, and hypocrisies, and envies, and all evil speaking, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. If so, be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious. To whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God, and precious, ye also as lively stones are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Wherefore also it is contained in the scripture, behold, I lay in Sion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. Don't you want to be that person that people can look at and say, I got this problem, I've been dealing with it. I know that Noah would be the guy I can talk to about this, because Noah knows Jesus, and his life is so, he never seems to have a problem. You know, his problems are never overwhelming. Maybe I can go to him about this. That's where I want to be. That silent witness, that caring person who people can come to with their problems. And there's a lot of people with a lot of serious problems out there. And they are Christians. But they don't know the Bible. They don't know that spiritual connection. They haven't studied the Word. They don't know which direction to go. All they do is go to church, and they might sing and dance and feel good afterwards. But the meat and potatoes of what we as Seventh-day Adventists believe in, they're not privy to. And I think it's very important for us to get out there into the world and demonstrate those values and help people work through their problems. It's a biblical imperative. I know that I've had a lot of people come to me because I really don't have any family problems, but I've got a lot of people, a lot of single mothers that I work with who have like their children have been killed, their children are sick in the hospital, their children are rebelling against everything that they laid down as their family values. And some of this stuff I don't have an answer to because I don't have rebellion in my family, thank God. I would hate for that. But there's some real problems out there, and we as Christians, as sentinels of God's values and His traditions, we have so much that we can give to the world. And I want to shed the dark side of my personality. And Ellen White in Acts of Apostles says this, and this is in closing. I know I haven't been up here this long, but this is probably the most important thing I've ever talked about. Because I've seen a lot of stuff in the last few months at work and on the road that just remind me of how quickly the Lord is coming and how desperate the devil is to take down as many people as he can. Ellen White in Acts of Apostles says, envy, malice, evil thinking, evil speaking, covetousness. These are weights that the Christian must lay aside if he would run successfully the race of immortality. Every habit or practice, not most of them, not some of them, every habit or practice that leads into sin and brings dishonor upon Christ must be put away. Whatever the sacrifice. That means if my job was so stressful, and I've talked about this before, I've had stressful jobs where I just could come home and I just couldn't decompress. I just couldn't think about things because I'm so stressed. The blessings of heaven cannot attend any man in violating the eternal principles of right. One sin cherished is sufficient to work degradation of character and to mislead others. This last paragraph is really telling. This is the paragraph that got me started on this journey. And this is a discussion I plan on refining and tuning for further use. No matter how high the profession, he whose heart is not filled with love for God and his fellow man is not a true disciple of Christ. That's heavy. Though he should possess great faith and have power even to work miracles, yet without love his faith would be worthless. He might display great liberality, but should he from some other motive than genuine love bestow all his goods to feed the poor, the act would not commend him to the favor of God. In his zeal, he might even meet a martyr's death. Yet, if not actuated by love, he would be regarded by God as a deluded enthusiast or an ambitious hypocrite. That's some serious stuff. And it goes to show you how far people can be deceived in their walk to martyrdom and still not be worthy of heaven. And that's the heavy thought that I've been thinking about over the last 2 months. And I wanted to share it with you. I love coming to this church. You guys are so welcoming and so kind. I wanted to launch this trial balloon here because I know I have a very accepting audience. And I hope that it means something to you about me sharing my heart to you, because I don't want to be just I don't want to just pass through this earth and be dead. I'd like to make a mark in somebody else's life. I would like to be able to say, man, the Bible studies that we have at the house, we finally had a baptism. That's what I want to be able to say. To be able to walk through heaven for 10 million years with somebody that you brought to Christ, is there any greater reward than that? No. So, and that is how you can live your greatest life. You can have business success. You can have familial success. You can be successful at anything. But until you're successful at doing what the Lord wants you to do and integrating God into everything that you do and sacrificing everything for His work, you're never going to know your potential, because there is a synergy that was created in us. We are to walk with Christ. He walked with us, and we were in the Garden of Eden. Unfortunately, by the decisions that our forefather Adam made and that we suffer from today, we can't necessarily walk with Jesus physically, but we certainly can spiritually. And that is going to be the people that carry us through the time of the end. So I really appreciate everybody listening, and I hope you have a very blessed Sabbath day. Thank you.
Let's see if I can get us back.